What is up guys, TopTierYugioh here, and today I just want to have a quick little discussion about some underrated cards from Rise of the Duelist. And so with Rise of the Duelist coming out in less than a week, we all know about the cards that are obviously strong. We know about the Dogmatica cards, we know about the Noble Knight stuff, but we also know about the cards that are not so good, like the Melfis and most of the OCG imports. But again, in this video, I want to talk about some cards that I think are actually really good that people aren't talking about. And so I've got like 5 or 6, maybe 7 or 8 really good underrated cards from Rise of the Duelist that I hope you guys will enjoy. And if you do, be sure to give this video a thumbs up because it does help the channel out a lot and I'd really appreciate it. But let's go ahead and get into the discussion. And so the first card that I want to talk about is the new Gizmek card. And so this card is actually really good, I think, for just going second. So let's just go through the effect really quickly. So the effect is that you can pay 1500 life points as a cost, destroy all monsters on the field, special summon from the extra deck. Also, you can only attack with one monster for the rest of the turn. Then you can only use each of the following effects once per turn. The first one is that if 2 or more monsters that were summoned from the extra deck are on the field, special summon this card from your hand. The second effect is that if this card in your possession is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card effect, you can banish one monster from your opponent's graveyard and then gain life points equal to its attack. And so, the main reason why I think this card is so powerful is that first effect actually. The part where you pay 1500 life points and destroy all monsters on the field summoned from the extra deck. I think this is really good going second versus a lot of different boards, such as the boards that you're going to see against the Adamantipator's and against Dragon Link, where they might have Herald, Savage Dragon, Seal, something else. Like this is going to be a really good card to have against those type of boards, because you're going to be able to just summon this against their board and they either have to negate it or it's going to break their board. And so if you're going against like Herald, Savage Dragon, for example, what you could do is, let's say they let the summon walk, right? You attack over the Herald and then you can just activate the effect to clear the Savage Dragon. But if they negate with Savage Dragon, because Savage Dragon doesn't destroy the card, and this effect is not once per turn, you can just activate it again and destroy the Savage Dragon and whatever else they have. And so that makes us really good at clearing boards, not to mention the attack is huge. But on the other hand, if they have something to negate this and destroy it, then you can just use the secondary effect to banish something from their graveyard, maybe something relevant to their follow-up play, and you're going to gain life points. And when we're back to playing in-person games like at locals and in events, that gaining life points could be the difference between winning and losing a match. So the fact that you're able to clear opponents' boards, gain life points, it just makes it a really strong card in my opinion. And it kind of reminds me of Pankratops, except it doesn't have a quick effect, and the destruction effect's a little more limited in that you can't destroy spells and traps, but on the other hand, you can clear multiple monsters. And so that's actually really big. And so I do think that this Gizmek card will see some play. I'm not quite sure when, but it's usually, or not usually, but it's always going to be a very solid option, I think, in side decks. So that's definitely something to look out for. If you pull them, maybe hold on to them or try to pick some up. So let's go ahead and move into the next card. And so the next card that I think is really underrated is the new Rikka Xyz monster that's in this set. And so it's, I forget the TCG name. I think it's a little different from this. It's like Rikka Queen Strenna, however you pronounce this. But let's go ahead and look at this effect. And so it's a generic rank 4, only requiring 2 level 4 monsters. The effect is that you can detach one material, target one plant monster or Rikka card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. If this card with material is tributed, special summon one rank 5 or higher rank 5 or higher plant Xyz monster from your extra deck or graveyard. And then you can attach this card as material. You can only use it once per turn. So this effect I think is actually really good for a number of reasons. First being that it's generic. That means you can summon it with things like Parallel Exceed, which I don't think they play in Rikka decks, but I think can see some play moving forward just due to the strength of this card. And so you could summon this, right? Detach, add something back from your graveyard to your hand. Not only a plant monster, you can add any plant monster, I should say. You can add back your Lone Fires or your Rikka cards, or you can add your Rikka spells and traps, and some of these are actually pretty good as well. And so you have some really good options here. And then the other effect is that when it's tributed, special summon a rank 5 or higher plant Xyz. So you pretty much could summon any of the other ones. You could summon this one, and it's going to allow you to extend. Or you could summon the Teardrop to be disruption on the opponent's turn, because this one has the quick effect to tribute any monster on the board. And so this new rank 4 gives you so many different options, plus it adds things back from the graveyard. It's just an incredible card overall. And you're usually going to have something good to add in the graveyard too, so just in terms of the value you get from this one generic rank 4, which again I think is going to be really cool with Parallel Exceed or other rank 4 engines in the Rikka deck, I think this can be very, very powerful and a really good addition to their deck. Again, I'm not quite sure how their decks play, or like I don't have experience with this archetype, but this is just like a good card on paper that's going to definitely help in some way or another. And so if you guys do have some Rikka decks, let me know, because this is kind of a cool archetype. They tribute things and get extra effects based on whether or not you tribute a monster. It's kind of neat. So this is definitely something underrated that I think could potentially see some play, especially in the rogue meta. Alright, so this next card is actually going to be kind of an extension of this last one. It's going to be some rank 4 support. So I guess I shouldn't call it an extension, but it is going to be something that you could actually use with the last card. And so this is going to be, I forget the TCG. I think it's Drill Driver, the TCG name. And so the OCG name was Vespenato the Spin Breaker, and it is a rank 5 that you can Xyz summon by just overlaying over any rank 4. And the effect is that if it attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage. Then, if this Xyz summon card in its owner's control is destroyed by opponent's card effect, then you can target a level 5 or lower monster in your graveyard, special summon it. You can only use it once per turn. Oh wait, not destroyed by an opponent's card effect, but an opponent's card. So it can be battle or card effect. But what this really reminds me of is Gaia Dragon. So if you guys have been playing this game a while, you guys definitely know about Gaia Dragon, the Thunder Charger. This was extremely popular, like at this point maybe like 4 to 5 years ago, when we had a lot of rank 5 and 6 decks, where this is something you could just overlay over those monsters, pierce into an opponent's monster, and then get more value out of that. Because you play your rank 5 or rank 6, get some value, level up into this, and then do some more damage. That's kind of the same thing we can do here with Drill Driver. But not to mention, on top of that, it also floats. And so I think this is going to allow you to get some great utility out of your rank 4s, but also get some more value as well. And so let's say you summon Abyss Dweller, you get, everything out of it, you use the effect twice, but then you're left with just a weak 1700 attack monster. Like that's useless. But you could just rank up into this, maybe pierce over an opponent's monster because this has 2500 attack, and then if your opponent gets rid of it, you could bring back some of the material that you initially used. Just a great card overall. I think any rank 4 deck is going to appreciate this addition. Oh, I just realized I forgot to mention why these cards are in the side deck here. I just wanted to keep these in mind. These are like the meta relevant archetypes and decks right now. So pretty much at this moment we have Adamantipator's, Dragon Link, and Eldritch that are the big 3 more or less. But then we also have Numeron decks popping up in a couple different variants of multiple decks, but you gotta keep the Numeron archetype in mind. Then we have Sky Strikers, Guru, and Altergeist in like a second place type of role here, to where they're great anti-meta. I don't want to call them anti-meta, but they're anti first 3 decks. Like, they're really good for going against these 3, but not good enough to really carry the meta on their own. These are kind of all in the same category. Relatively strong control decks, pretty much. But then after that, we have the Ignoble Knights and the Dogmatica cards coming out in Rise of the Duelist. And with Dogmatica, we're going to see increases in play in both Invoked and Shaddolls. And so these are kind of the archetypes that I'm trying to keep in mind when I'm looking at the new cards in Rise of the Duelist, and pretty much in all the decks that I play. Just trying to think like, what's going to be good enough to combat these top 3 decks? How am I going to also play against these control decks? Am I going to lose that 0? What about the Ignoble Knights, Dogmaticas? I gotta have outs to Winda. Can't lose the Makaba either. And so these are just the things that I'm keeping in mind with a lot of these new cards. And so, for example, the Gizmek, I think it's going to be good against these combo boards, relatively so. It's also kind of big, so the control decks maybe have issues dealing with it. Not being a monster from the extra deck is kind of relevant against Dogmatica, and negating the effect doesn't really do anything against them, so you can still just beat over their board because the attack is so high, it's like 2950. Again, it attacks over Winda. So this is a card that I think is good against a lot of different decks. Then looking at the Rikka card, this is more of a going first card, but if you're able to again float this into Teardrop tribute to your opponent's monsters, and so that's going to be really good against a lot of different decks which just have nothing to protect themselves against being tributed. So that's a really interesting mechanic. This isn't going to be as good against a lot of these decks, but it's just a generally good card. Like, sometimes your opponent has something in defense, and this is going to be a really good thing to have against it. So, for example, they have a Herald in defense. Maybe you can get into a rank 4 that they don't negate somehow, and then you just attack over the Herald and deal damage. That could be big. Or against Subterrors, they will set a lot of their monsters, you attack into it, deal some damage, then they got to deal with the floater. That can be difficult. So there are just situations where this comes up, but this isn't like a meta breaker or anything, just an overall good card. Let's see, this next card that I want to talk about that's underrated is one of the new Ancient Warrior cards. So this is an archetype that I remember having a lot of hype going into, I think it was an Eternity Code where these came out, but they never really panned out like people thought it would. But this card I actually think is really, really strong. And so I don't recall the English TCG name, but it's the Allied Generals of Ancient Warriors, and then whatever the name is, I don't want to mispronounce it. But to summon it, you only need 2 Beast Warrior monsters, one of which being Wind, and then it gains 500 attack to all Ancient Warrior monsters. That's the first effect. But then it has 2 more effects, each of which are once per turn. The first is that when this card is link summoned, add 1 Ancient Warrior's card from your deck to your hand. The second effect is you can send 1 card from your hand or field to the graveyard, target a face-up card your opponent controls, return it to the hand. So I think this card is so good for this archetype. I mean, it literally does everything you would want a card to do. Let me just pull up the rest of the archetype real quick, but this does everything you would want a card to do for any sort of archetype. It's easy to summon, just need 2 Beast Warriors. They're all Beast Warriors if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, they're all Beast Warriors. And then one of them has to be Wind. They're not all Wind, so that's maybe a little bit tricky to get to a Wind one, but if you can, and there are going to be ways to get this done, you get some great effects. I mean, boosting the attack of everything can be huge, being able to search, huge, but then getting some quick effect disruption is also very big, because they do already have some, but being able to have a Link monster having that means you can kind of stack them on top of each other, and then get multiple forms of disruption between dealing with monsters. They have a spell trap negator, so this really gives them a lot more utility in their engine. But also, the fact that you send the card from your hand or field to the graveyard is actually really relevant with their spell and traps, because all of their spell and traps, or I think most of them at least, have effects when sent to the graveyard. So when this card leaves the field, you know, you get some stuff. Let's see, I think this one has it too. I know some of them have it. Some of them have that effect. And so, again, I'm not super familiar with Ancient Warriors, but I know this does have synergy for sure. Let's see, where is it? If this card is sent from the spell and trap card zone to the graveyard, summon 1 Ancient Warriors from your hand. Yeah, so that could be really good. Like, you use the first effect, add an Ancient Warrior to your hand. Then on your opponent's turn, you use the second effect, bounce 1 of their cards, send this to the graveyard, then use this graveyard effect, summon something else from your hand. That could give you some more disruption. Like, I think, I'm not sure which one was the spell trap negator. I think it's this one, actually. No, it's, wait, yeah, maybe it is. When a monster effect's activated, quick effect, negate the activation. They have a bunch of interesting effects, but the Link monster is very good, is my point. So that, I think, is another really strong, underrated card from Rise of the Duelist. Sorry, I don't remember the TCG name, but if you just search Ancient Warriors and Rise of the Duelist, you'll find it. Alright, so for this next card, this is a generic one actually. This is Blizzard. And so, Blizzard is a very simple card, very simple effect. And the effect is that you can just target, it's a quick play spell by the way, but you can target 1 spell that your opponent controls until the end of this turn, negate the activated effects on the field of that card, and of spells with the same name as that card. And also, if that card would be sent to the graveyard, return it to the opponent's hand. And so, It's kind of like that trap card Retort, I think it's called. Let's see, I think it's Retort, to where it negates something and then adds it back to the hand. It's a counter trap. Let's see, the opponent activates a spell or trap with the same name as one in the graveyard, negate. And oh, okay, that's very different. But regardless, this card is, I think, really good for just negating your opponent's spell cards. I think it's just really cool to have a quick play spell that you can use to negate other spells. So if, let's say, your opponent has a spell card on the field that you want to negate, such as maybe a hidden city so that you can attack, rather than your opponent being able to negate your attack and flip a monster, it can be good for that. Or if they have any other type of face-up spell on the board. I guess in this current format there aren't very many options for that. But the other effect, or not the other effect, but being able to use it by setting it on your turn and then negating a spell on your opponent's turn is absolutely very powerful. So I think about Numeron Network, for example, to where it sends calling as a cost. Well, you chain Blizzard to their network, they already have to pay the cost, and so that might have been their only Numeron calling that they had in the deck, and now they can't even use the network even though it gets added back to their hand. And so that's a really good example of being able to negate something, and even though you add it back to their hand, it still hurts them a lot. Or something like a Shaddoll Fusion or an Invocation, to where you might negate one, and even if they have multiples, they're not going to be able to play it. And not being able to play those cards are key for their engine. Like not being able to summon a Makaba, well, now they have no disruption for you except maybe like a Fleur de Lis if they're playing Dogmaticas, or if you negate their Shaddoll Fusion, maybe they don't have a fusion, and so that could be huge. And same, like I said, against Subterrors, not having Hidden City can be very, very big. Against Sky Striker, you can be using this to negate Widow Anchors and Shark Cannons. And there are not many cards in the game, actually, that can negate Widow Anchor and Shark Cannon. And so Blizzard's pretty interesting for that. You wouldn't want to use it in any of these top 3 matchups. None of these really have spells that you care about. Dragons do, but they have so many extenders that stopping one just probably isn't enough. But in general, I do think that Blizzard is an interesting card that people aren't talking enough about, that has the potential to really have an impact, I think. And so again, this is something that if you can pick up very cheaply or you pull in your packs, keep it. It's a good card. Alright, so for this next card, we have something that I didn't realize actually is already out, but it's also coming out in Rise of the Duelist, and so we're going to talk about it because it's new to me. I didn't realize this was even a thing until looking through the Rise of the Duelist set. And so the card I'm talking about is the Fury of the Kairyu-Shin. And so it's a normal spell card. The effect is that you can add 1 Torrential Tribute from your deck to your hand. If a water monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this from your graveyard instead. You can only use each effect once per turn. So the main thing about this card, obviously, is being able to search Torrential Tribute. And Torrential Tribute is, I think, one of the most powerful trap cards in the game. I mean, it was limited for so long. And just, even if your opponent knows it's there, how do they play around that? So if you're playing against Rock, for example, they're going to be able to clear multiple monsters off the board, because they have no like normal summon that deals with back row natively. And so you can really just have it set, they know you have it set, and then you just wait for the most opportune time to use it, and there's really no way around it. So it's just a really good card there. Same against dragons. Against Eldritch, it doesn't do as much because they don't summon that much, like within their engine really. And even when they do, they all float for the most part, or they're gonna get more advantage from it. Like if they summon some traps, you Torrential, fine. Or if they summon Lord, you Torrential, okay. That doesn't really do anything. It can actually hurt Numerons a lot. So let's say they resolve Calling and they summon their gates. Well, they can only summon 1 more time for the turn. If they use that summon on the S0 that gets Torrential Tributed, ooh, that they just lose. Because they're losing so much tempo and advantage goes into successfully summoning S0 when using the effect, that if you have an answer for it, yeah, not good for them. But also, it can be cool that when opponents try to hold their S0 to chain to one of your cards, because they're trying to play around impermanence, play around Gamma, so sometimes they won't do it in the standby phase. But let's say you activate Fury within the main phase as your first card, they chain S0, fine. You search Torrential Tribute, set it, now they gotta deal with that Torrential. And so even though they skipped your turn, you're pretty much skipping their turn, because they're not gonna want to summon the monsters. Because if they do, you Torrential, that handles the S0, and then you're able to continue playing from there. Let's see, Sky Strikers doesn't affect them. Guru doesn't summon much, but if they do, it can be an out to their monsters, but they probably end up negating it with like a Fiendus or something, so not a huge issue there. Altergeist, they're fine. It could be good against Ignoble Knights if you can get that Torrential off before they get to their negator, then it could be strong there. It's really good, I think, against Dogmatica, because if you can clear their Dogmatica cards, they won't be able to summon Fleur de Lis, and then they won't have any disruption. So really good against them, and against Invoked and Shaddolls, don't really do anything. But in general, though, I think Torrential's a good card, and being able to search it is even better. And so I think that Fury is actually something that'll see some play, especially in water decks. Alright, so for this next card, it has a super niche effect, but I definitely think that it's good enough to see some play at some point. And that card is something Lunar Dragon. I don't remember what it is in the TCG. I think it's like Celgene. Wait, that's a pharmaceutical company. Seleglare, starts with an S, something Lunar Dragon. But regardless, you'll know it when you see it. Just remember, it's the monster that's level 6, 2400 attack, 1000 defense. So it's got those Monarch stats, which is actually very relevant here. And so the effect is that, or first I'll say it's a level 6 monster, light dragon, 2400 attack, 1000 defense. You can normal summon or set this card without tributing, but its original attack becomes 1500. During the main phase, quick effect, you can target one monster your opponent controls with less attack than this card, and then return this card to the hand, and if you do, take control of that target until the end phase. You can only use this effect once per turn. And so this card I think is really interesting because it's a very easy way to have some disruption on your opponent's turn. And even if you normal summon it and it goes down to 15, having that quick effect to just take control of an opponent's monster is very, very powerful. And all you gotta do is bounce it back to the hand so you're not losing card advantage, you still can use it again in the future. That's incredible. And then, again, you're stopping your opponent. But I think that the synergy that you get with this card too, with it being a dragon, it being light, 2400 attack, 1000 defense, makes it compatible with Monarchs. I think if Monarchs ever come back, which Monarchs actually have they have a lot of really strong cards, I think that this could definitely see some play. So like if you look at Ether, for example, which is at 3 now, you can use Ether's effect. You can summon anything, so summon one monster, 2400 attack, 1000 defense. You can use Ether on your opponent's turn, summon this, and it will have its full attack of 2400, and now you can use this effect on your opponent's turn to take control of one of their monster, because I don't think Ether negates their effect. I'm pretty positive it doesn't, because you'd use Kuras back in the day. Yeah, it doesn't. So, yeah, this could be really good, being able to summon Celgene, or Lunar Dragon, or whatever it's called, and then you could take control of an opponent's monster until the end phase. And let's say you have this with, like, an Escalation as well. And so Escalation is another card that lets you tribute summon on your opponent's turn. And so you could summon Ether, right? Then summon into Lunar Dragon, taking another of an opponent's monster. And then you could use Escalation, tribute that monster for something else, and get even more effects. And so I could see this definitely being a really cool interaction. And then with this being dragon, I'm sure there's a lot of dragon synergy with this card. I can't think of anything that summons dragons from the deck at the moment, but I know they exist. And so for you dragon players, this is definitely something to keep your eye on, because if you can get this out, especially get it out for cheap or little to no cost, it can be a really cool form of disruption. Alright, so there's one more card I want to mention. This last one is a trap card that I actually was very, very heavily underrating too for a while. I was underrating it, and so that's how I know other people are maybe underrating it too. Let's see, what is this card called in the OCG? I know in the TCG it's Ice Dragon Prison, but here it's something else. So I think this is it, yeah. It's Ice Dragon Prison in the TCG, but in the OCG it's a Draconian Prison for Snow and Sky. And so it's a normal trap card, and the effect is that you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, special summon it to your field, but negate the effects, if any. Then you can banish 2 monsters with the same type as each other. And so, one from each field, by the way. And you can only activate 1 per turn. So this card is absolutely insane in so many different matchups. I think it's going to be a new staple side deck card, because what it allows you to do is summon something from your opponent's graveyard. So it takes it out of their graveyard, for one. And so if you're playing against a deck that has graveyard effects, you can get rid of that. So get rid of the Block Dragon if they need it. Get rid of the Phalanx. Get rid of the Lord. Get rid of the Ray. Get rid of the whatever they're summoning with Phoenix, the Faker, the Noble Knight, the Dogmaticas don't really use the graveyard, but the Alistair, the Shadal. Get rid of all of those cards, right? And then now it's on your side of the field, so it can give you a body. But the other thing you could do is choose to banish 2 monsters of the same type from the field. And so in a lot of matchups, whatever is in their graveyard is going to be the same type as what's on the field. You summon a rock from their graveyard, they probably have a rock on the field. All dragons, all zombies. These are mostly warriors. Well, the links are machines. Subterrors are all different types. These are all warrior. These are all spellcasters. Also, these are all spellcasters. And so you're going to be able to very likely summon something, or I'm sorry, banish something from the opponent's field too. And so something else to keep in mind are just like, in the Eldritch matchup, you can summon a Lord from their graveyard, banish the Lord that's on their field. That will win you the game if they're playing only 2 Lords, which a lot of Eldritch decks are only playing 2. I mean, if you just check out my own personal deck profiles on this channel, a link of which will be in the top right corner of the screen in the YouTube cards. Shameless plug, but if you do this against Eldritch, you win. Again, against Rock, against Dragons, you can really banish like their main major cards. Or if you're playing against a Jet Synchro combo deck, you could do something like banishing a copy of O-Lion, or special summon a copy of O-Lion from their graveyard when they try to use Metal Marcher. So they'll go into Metal Marcher, use the effect targeting O-Lion. You use Ice Dragon Prisons to take the O-Lion. So now they're not going to be getting O-Lion on their board, so they're not getting that tuner. They're losing access to a tuner, which is huge, and they're losing access to the token that it would have gotten them. Then you banish their Metal Marcher, because Metal Marcher is also a machine. And so with that interaction, you're taking away 2 tuners and a token. That will win you the game probably. That's completely stopping their combo. There's nothing that they can do from that point because they're only going to have Link Cross and a Link Cross token. And so that puts you in a really, really good position. And so there's so many scenarios where Ice Dragon's Prison can just be a complete blowout. And so I can definitely see this being a card that would be a very, very big side deck option moving forward. And while a lot of you might say that this isn't an underrated card, I think it's so good that people are just, it should be overrated, but it's not. And that makes it underrated, if that makes any sense. But if you think that's a cop-out, I will give you one extra really good underrated card, and that's going to be the Super Heavy Samurai Link monster. And this is something I'll just talk about really quickly because I'm not familiar with the archetype very much, but just on paper, looking at the effect, it's a Link 1 that only requires 1 Super Heavy Samurai monster. Can't be used as Link material if you have, or this cannot be used as Link material, and if you have no spells and traps in the graveyard, no battle damage. The main part is that you can just discard a monster, target a Super Heavy in your graveyard and summon it in defense. Now you can only do that if you have no spells and traps in the graveyard, but as a deck they don't generally play spells and traps anyway, so that's not our issue. This is just a free special summon. And so again, I don't know much about the archetype, but I do know that free special summons are good, and so definitely keep this in mind if you ever thought about playing Super Heavy Samurais but were on the fence. Just know they are getting some really good support in Rise of the Duelist. But alright guys, this pretty much wraps up my list of some underrated cards from Rise of the Duelist. We have the new Gizmek, Blizzard, Fury of the Kairyu-Shin, Lunar Dragon Celgene, Ice Dragon's Prison, the new Rikka Queen, Drill Driver, and the new Ancient Warriors Link monster. These are all really good cards coming out in that new set Rise of the Duelist that I think people just aren't paying enough attention to, but I'm hoping that you guys are now aware of these cards and pick them up. And so thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, if you do like these type of discussion videos, let me know in the comment section below because this might be something I try again in the future. So yeah, just let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.